Irashaimase! Hello and welcome to Fataris' Kitchen. I'm your host, Chef Fataris. It's time once again for Shoot 'em Up Saturday, and on the menu this Saturday we have Koutetsu Yosai Strahl, a 1992 Japanese arcade classic now on consoles. What kind of taste will it have? Let's get cooking and find out. From developer UPL, Koutetsu Yosai Strahl, which roughly translates as Still Fortress Strahl, released to Japanese arcades in 1992. It didn't receive a worldwide release or a console release, but now in 2020, courtesy of Hamster, it's available as an arcade archive title for the Nintendo Switch and the PlayStation 4. So the easiest way to describe this one is it's your staple early 90s arcade shooter. If that's your jam, then this is one that's worth having a look at. But it is fairly generic in its genre. So, diving into the gameplay itself, we'll drop some coins into the machine and start it up. So, you can play this game 2 players simultaneous, and it gives you a few moments to confirm whether you want to play it 1 player or 2. We can skip past that, and it takes us, before we start a stage, we always have this loadout screen. So, this loadout screen is one of the really neat features that is unique to Koutetsu Yosai Strahl. So, we have these different loadouts for our main weapon. To start off, I'll just kind of go with the twin. The homing is my favorite by far of the sub-weapons, so I'll be using that more than anything. And we'll go with the rocket for our bomb. So you have a certain payload you can equip, up to 1,200 kilograms. And once you've picked your loadout, any additional weight you haven't spent on your loadout is given to you in bombs in that gauge there in the bottom of the screen. So the more weight you have still available to carry, the more bombs you carry. It's possible throughout your entire loadout that you'll only have enough room for like a single bomb, or you might not even be able to equip everything because your loadout is so heavy. So by taking the lightest gun and a reasonably light sub-weapon, that means we can have a greater amount of our bombs. But ultimately, I don't feel that your bombs are really that useful in most situations. You're probably better off going with a loadout you like rather than bombs. So let's talk a little bit about our loadout. So we're using the twin laser right now, as well as the homing missiles. And the homing missiles in this game are awesome. Since they do such a wonderful job of moving around, they've even got that neat little like wavy traveling pattern that they have. So that's our main type of damage. Is in a lot of ways we're actually using our sub-weapon to attack the enemies more than we're using our primary weapon. At least if you're not using the homing. Or not the homing, sorry. If you're not using the rapid fire. The rapid fire does make it a little bit more viable to use your primary weapon. But in some situations, such as if you take the charge main weapon, you wouldn't want to use rapid fire. But as is typical with the Arcade Archive releases, rapid fire is there, and I do recommend using it as it does make things easier here. Though there is a warning that it can lead to additional slowdown, which is something this game doesn't really have much of, which is a definite positive. As far as gameplay is concerned, it is your typical horizontal scrolling shooter, which is the ability to shoot and fire our bombs, which I've not done so yet, because we do have a limited selection. So without much fanfare, we have arrived at the boss of the first stage, so we will start to use our bombs, which in this case are just these large rockets that we can fire at the enemy, and they deal quite a bit of damage, making short work of the boss. So with that, stage 1 is in the books. We get our bomb stock, a bonus for how many bombs we have remaining, as well as a stage clear bonus. Then we're taken back to the weapon select. And let's change things up and go for a different weapon selection. So right off the bat, let's go with just the regular laser, and we'll take the expand. So the expand is kind of an explosive shell that will explode. And this next stage is completely in the air, so there's no point in taking anything else aside from the rocket, in my opinion. Stage 2. So one thing I haven't mentioned is like the cannons that fire your sub-weapon are on the top and bottom of your ship. If you happen to press your bomb and your shot at the same time, it's possible to change the angle that you're firing your sub-weapons at. It has 5 total positions: forward, forward, upward, upward, forward, back, and back. So it's actually kind of useful. You can use it to help cover yourself from the back, or you can use it to, if you're using the homing, to give your homing a little bit of a better range to shoot targets behind you. So obviously you can see what the laser itself does, but let's talk a little bit about the sub-weapon. So the sub-weapon I'm using is the Expand, and it's the heaviest sub-weapon, and its reputation is well earned. Because the way that it works is it has a brief lasting explosion where it impacts, so it will deal additional damage. This is useful because it will allow you to deal heavy damage to enemies, and it has an added bonus that it will destroy enemy shots. So any enemy shots that happen to be within its explosion radius will be cancelled out, being a huge positive for it. The negative is just that its weight payload. It will mean you have less bombs. But as I said, you might want to go for stronger main and sub weapons and worry less about your bomb payload. And those are basically the systems we have here in Koutetsu Fortress Strahl. Now I'm combining my light translation with the Japanese title. It's a little bit off. So we've kind of seen what the gameplay has. The stages themselves are relatively long, and I feel like you've got like some stage points in the stages like this one here where there's not a whole lot going on. Also, some enemies like this that'll give you cheap shots if you don't know their pattern. So that's a minus flavor, just the long stages with some occasional unexpected downtime. The game is a little on the shorter side. There are only 5 stages total, well 6 if you count the final boss, but that's all that the 6th stage is just the final boss fight. Then there are some issues with color palette. So the enemy bullets can be lost in the background relatively easily. And that is something that is a potential issue, so something to maybe keep an eye out for. The 3rd stage in particular is where that does get pretty bad. But as far as the plus flavors are concerned, I love games that have the kind of loadout options that Strahl presents to you. And also the pixel art, particularly the backgrounds, I quite enjoy. So this 2nd stage with just the clouds doesn't show that off as well as the 1st stage and the 3rd stage, which is us traveling in front of a cityscape. But the overall pixel art is quite enjoyable. And then it just does have that classic early 90s feel of shoot 'em ups, and that's one of my favorite eras of shoot 'em ups, so of course it would be one that I would be quite a fan of. So there you have it. Koutetsu Youkai Strahl served up for your enjoyment. Definitely, if you're a fan of this era of shoot 'em ups, this is one that's worth taking a look at. As it was before this release, it was one I was completely unfamiliar with. And although it's not necessarily one that I will find myself returning to on a regular basis, I'm still glad I got the opportunity to play this one, where I might have completely been unaware of it had it not released as an arcade archive. Alright, that'll just about wrap it up for this week's episode of Shoot 'em Up Saturday. As always, I want to thank you so much for joining me this week, and I look forward to seeing you next week.